legislature relations for sustainable growth and development.
Former Senate leader Mohammed Ali Ndume suspended for bringing the upper legislative chamber to disrepute.
And fight against Boko Haram. United States Secretary of State Rex Tillerson commends Nigeria.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, our focus is on sustaining the gains of the Naira.
All right, now just about 6 weeks ago, Nigeria's currency, the Naira, hit 520 in exchange for $1, with the euro and pound sterling going for some 600 Naira on the parallel market, in spite of the interbank rate, which stood at some 307 Naira to the US dollar.
Indeed, even as it attained this worrisome height, the development raised concern among Nigerians, especially manufacturers and, of course, importers of essential machineries, leading to payment for medicals and school fees.
Well, the National Economic Council, headed by the Vice President, that's Professor Yemi Oshibajo, as well as other professional bodies of esteem, raised their voices against the rising tide of, against the declining fortunes of the Naira measured versus international currencies.
All right, Kingsley. Now, this development again led to rise in prices of goods and services, and indeed, it became a daily talking point as petty traders of such items like vegetables, cooking oil, and even granules, all produced in Nigeria, raised their prices and attributed it to the Naira-dollar exchange rate.
However, on Monday, the 20th of February this year, the Central Bank of Nigeria, that's the CBN, began its intervention through a new Forex policy, which it entitled New Policy Actions in the Foreign Exchange Market. Now, this development came a week after the National Economic Council had also requested for a review of the then prevailing Forex policy due to the huge disparity between the rates on the parallel market as well as interbank.
And so, in continuation of efforts to increase the availability of foreign exchange to ease the difficulties encountered by Nigerians in obtaining funds for foreign exchange transactions, the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, is providing direct additional funding to banks, and that's to meet up the needs of Nigerians for personal and business travel, medical needs, as well as school fees, of course, and that's with immediate effect.
Now, with about $1.5 billion already injected into the interbank market and barely 24 hours after its directive to deposit money banks in the country to sell Forex obtained from it as the central bank to retail end users at not more than 360 Naira to $1 for so-called invisibles, the CBN on Tuesday this week, that's to say the 28th of March, crashed the rate at which it sells Forex to Bureau de Change. That is to say that it's selling it at 360 Naira to Bureau de Change operators. And they directed the BDCs, as they are also called, to sell to end users at not more than 362 Naira to the dollar.
Indeed, Kingsley, the Naira has been appreciating for quite a while against other foreign currencies. But Nigerians have asked, how sustainable is this new foreign exchange policy by the CBN? And are there measures that can be taken to ensure its sustainability? And we, of course, will be having our experts, as usual, in the house as we move on to the program to give us an answer, to look at this development and probably how, of course, it can be sustained. And so it's on this note. I welcome you once again to another interesting edition of the program, Good Morning Nigeria, GMN, and it's happening live right here on the Nigerian Television Authority, the NTA, Africa's largest TV network. I am Claire Adilabu Abdul-Razak. Welcome.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I also welcome you to this program, in the course of which we shall bring you our regular companion segments, that's including newspaper review, business, foreign, and others. Of course, there will be a look at weather prospects for the rest of today. But the major topic for our conversation this morning is how the Naira has been faring positively in recent weeks on account of the CBN intervention, and how sustainable that is in dealing with the speculators who had, of course, caused the battering of the Naira. In the meantime, we're going over to the newsroom now, and our caster this morning is Double J. That's Joseph Johnson.
Hello, Kingsley. Good morning, and thanks for joining us on the news desk at this hour. I'm Joseph Johnson. Far-reaching measures have been taken by the Federal Executive Council towards ensuring that relationships between the executive and the legislature remains cordial for sustainable growth and development of the country. The Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, while briefing newsmen after the council meeting, said a high-powered committee has already been constituted towards addressing areas of concern.
It's a continuous struggle balancing between the executive and the legislative, because each of them are creations of the law. And we must strive at all times to ensure that there's that balance and that amity and there's that smooth relationship. And this matter was discussed, and the committee already is working on ensuring that, we resolve all these outstanding issues.
And the effects of it will be that there'll be better information sharing and cooperation between countries within West Africa on tax administration. This is really part of our tax reform efforts. As you know, many of Nigerians, for example, own properties in Ghana and other neighbouring countries. Now, for tax purposes, will be able to have access to that type of information.
There is this issue of the law which says that every public building must be insured in terms of fire. Myself and the Minister of Finance will put heads together to look at how best we can explore that situation, so that from that kind of taxes we'll be able to fund the fire service adequately.
To the legislature now, where the Senate has suspended Senator Mohammed Ali Ndume for 6 months for bringing the upper legislative chamber to disrepute. The suspension follows the presentation of an investigative report of the Senate Committee on Ethics set up to look into allegations against the Senate President Bukola Saraki on importation of an SUV vehicle, and that of Senator Dino Melaye on certificate forgery. While presenting the report, Chairman Senate Committee on Ethics Samuel Ayahu exonerated both legislators of all allegations.
Facts before presented at the plenary, he could not be said to be a patriotic representative of the Senate and should be penalized to serve as a deterrent to others.
If someone sees allegations against anybody in the social media network, or any frivolous, trivial allegation, I think it's quite improper to bring that accusation or allegation to the floor of the Senate, thereby wasting the time of this august assembly.
I want to plead that this be reduced to at least 6 months.
Meanwhile, the House of Representatives Committee on Aviation says it is impressed with instrument landing system and other safety standards at Kaduna International Airport after an inspection tour facilities at the airport. The inspection is premised on questionable aerodrome standard, which the House of Representatives mandated its members to investigate.
Impressed with NAMA facilities. At this airport, terminal building is small to contain the huge traffic that we are experiencing now. And we've seen the perimeter fencing, and work is still ongoing.
We have only special trucks that bring fuel to the fuel depot. These are Jet A1 trucks. There is nothing like ordinary trucks coming from the city.
And in spite of the misgivings by some Nigerians on the capacity by Kaduna International Airport to handle heavy international operations, some experts are expressing a contrary opinion owing to adequate measures and facilities provided for the Herculean task.
Well, we are not aware of any issue of security by cattle riders getting access to the runway. No report has reached us because the airport is properly fenced, and we have a patrol team on ground that goes around the perimeter fence every now and then.
The entire airport is being fenced, even with barbed wire, throughout. You can also see there are military people inside, 24 hours. So I don't think there's any problem not to worry about.
In the meantime, Speaker Yakubu Dogara has assured pensioners in Nigeria of the commitment of the National Assembly to ensure that the issues of pension liabilities are addressed. Dogara, who made this known when he granted audience to the Nigerian Union of Pensioners, explained that this is one measure of checking corruption in the civil service. He said the National Assembly will invite relevant agencies to address the issue.
And the National Assembly, and thankfully the budget is before us. Minister or whoever is the head of the agency, what are we going to do in order to solve this problem in 2017? We have to make that decision before we even approach Mr. President. That is our responsibility.
On TV, during the ongoing verification exercise, where old people are carried like corpses, that is to show you what people are going through. Old people struggling to go to the verification center.
Also, the plight of pensioners echoed in the Senate on Tuesday with the plea for the federal government to consider paying their benefits from bailout funds. It came as the Executive Secretary of Pension Transitional Arrangement Directorate, Sharon Ikeazo, reiterated her commitment towards restoring confidence in pension administration.
Mr. President, also concerned that the pensioners under the defined benefit scheme, that is before 24, which include the police pensions, the Nigerian Customs Service, Nigerian Immigration Service, Nigerian Prison Service, Civil Service, and other parastatals, are yet to be paid their 33% accrued arrears, amounting to another 174 billion.
Turning to security matters now, Nigeria has been commended for degrading Boko Haram through the multinational joint task force of the Lake Chad Basin. United States Secretary of State Rex Tillerson gave the commendation at the just concluded summit on global coalition working to defeat ISIS held in Washington, D.C.
We need greater intelligence and information sharing within our own domestic intelligence agencies and among our nations. One example of this is West African nations who have put aside national differences to combat Boko Haram. Let us build on this good example.
This issue of terrorism, it's a global thing, it's worldwide, and we have to share best practices. That was part of the outcome of today's conference.
And finally, the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Shola Enikonlaye, has condemned the attacks on Nigerian students in India by the Indian nationals. The Permanent Secretary maintains that the perpetrators must be punished as a deterrent to others.
It is therefore a deep concern to us, the Nigerian students in that part of Uttar Pradesh, Greater Noida, were harassed, they were beaten up, many of them seriously injured, some have been released. And we think this should not happen, given the excellent relations that so happily exist between Nigeria and India.
The Indian law enforcement agencies have acted swiftly and arrested 5 Indian nationals involved in this incident, and they're still searching for 2 more who are still absconding, and the latest information I have is they're very soon going to be able to nab these 2 others also.
The Indian High Commissioner to Nigeria, Nagabhushana Reddy, gave assurance that the full wrath of the law will be visited on the culprit. And that's it on the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Claire and Kinsley after this break. Bye-bye.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words: run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Right now, teaching and learning is quite effective because we learn in a conducive environment. In those days, we had leaking roofs, but now everything is now modernized. What is happening here to there, and one tends to look around, you can see that there is a total and complete transformation of what used to be of this place. Even those practicals that we did not get when the other administrations were, so the governor has provided it for us.
He has brought this education to the highest peak in Edo State. I am telling you that everybody now is interested in education.
This is a rescue mission project where education is free. The Imo Rescue Mission. Imo must be better.
So what's up, sweetheart? You really look like you're up to something.
I have a secret.
Okay.
I'll be going to Europe next week.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Like you have your visa, your passport, your plane ticket?
No, not that way. Some men are helping us. We pay them, they take us through the desert, and then we cross the sea into Europe.
The desert, the sea. Isn't that the route where many have died?
Yes, it is indeed a very dangerous journey. In 2016 alone, 4,900 people died while crossing the Mediterranean Sea to enter Europe. Many were Nigerians. For the very few who survived the journey, they are forced into prostitution or other crimes just to survive. Eventually, they will be arrested and deported to Nigeria. Don't be a victim. Don't go this way.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
All right, this is Good Morning Nigeria, right here on the NTA. We're moving on now to business, and Nigeria crude oil export is to rise in May. We also have details of banks' loss of 1 trillion current accounts deposits in February. Amina Nojim tells us more.
The Central Bank of Nigeria says it plans to sell 234.89 billion naira of short-dated treasury bills at an auction on April 6th. The bank said it plans to sell 35 billion naira of 3-month debt, 33.49 billion of 6-month bills, and 166.40 billion of 1-year notes using a Dutch auction system. Payment will be due the day after the auction. Nigeria's central bank issues treasury bills twice a month to finance the budget deficit, help manage commercial lenders' liquidity, and curb rising inflation. Nigeria has, in 2 consecutive auctions this month, sold 1-year treasury bills at yields above prevailing inflation rate in a bid to lure investors to buy more of the debt. In other developments, total current account deposits of banks fell by 1 trillion naira in February, implying banks generated fewer deposits during the month due to the biting effect of the economic recession. This was one of the highlights of the Depository Corporation Survey for February 2017, recently published by the Central Bank of Nigeria. Among other things, the survey revealed that total demand for current account deposit of banks fell by 10.75% to 8.6 trillion naira in February from 9.636 trillion in January. Similarly, currency outside banks declined month-on-month by 1.16% to 1.61 trillion naira. Consequently, narrow money supply declined by 9.36% to 10.21 trillion naira. Stocks on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange Wednesday maintained the negative sentiment recorded on Tuesday's trading to see the all-share index decline by 0.55% to close at 25,267.68 basis points. Next is a graphic summary. Nigeria's crude oil exports are set to rise to 1.66 million barrels per day in May, according to a loading program. The program for the month is set up for April's revised loading and also puts Nigeria just above Angola's planned export of 1.61 million barrels per day in May. While Nigeria has consistently been Africa's largest oil exporter, its loading has fallen below those of Angola several times over the past year, as it dealt with militant attacks on oil infrastructure in the Niger Delta. Similarly, a joint committee of producers from within and outside the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, have agreed to review an extension of last year's agreement to cut production by 6 months. An earlier draft of the statement had said that the committee reported a high level of conformity and recommends a 6-month extension. A final version merely said it would be a review of the oil market conditions and another meeting of the subject on April 17th. OPEC and 11 other leading producers agreed last year to cut their combined output by almost 1.8 million barrels per day in the first half of 2017. And that concludes the business package. I am Amina Nujeng.
Thank you very much there, Amina Nujeng, for the business package. Next for us now, we'll take a look at the headlines in some of today's newspapers.
And time again to welcome Bayo Atoyebe in our midst this morning. Bayo, good morning.
Good morning, Claire. Good morning, Kinsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, Bayo, pleasure to have you join us for today's review. Let's begin by taking a look at the front page of the Punch newspaper. Let's begin with the Punch. You can see the lead story there for the Punch says 2 CBN directors arrested for alleged Forex manipulation. With the rider $19 billion naira Pari Club scam. EFCC to grill Saraki's aides today. Now, other headlines on the front page there, of course, that's a story that is common to the front pages of most of the papers. Senate suspends Ndume over Saraki Melaye saga, and Buhari raises panel. That story can be found inside. And President's aides, Falana and Ezekwesili, attack senators. Now, 2 earpieces there. I won't honor Senate summons, says Sage. That's Professor Isha Sage. And NNPC plans to generate and transmit electricity. Details of the story, of course, can be found inside. Now, there are other headlines below the photograph on the front page of the Punch newspaper. You can see the headline there. It says, bandits kill 2 policemen in Kogi bank robbery. And Buhari names Mohammed Ochele's replacements and seeks Senate approval. We won't disclose Buhari's medical bill. That's according to the federal government. Details of the story can be found inside. Claire.
All right, we'll move on to the Daily Trust newspaper. And Daily Trust lays with the report, Shibajo heads team to end rift with National Assembly. That's on the front page. There you have it. And also, just a little above it, 8 die of suspected Lassa fever in Kano. And Ndume gets 6 months suspension. And if we come down a bit, of course, we find the Jenny Hassan await confirmation as ministers. You can find the details of that on page 3. Other trending stories, police parade ex-DSS operative over kidnapping. It's on page 10. And federal government, why we won't disclose cost of Buhari's medical bill. You can find that on page 5. Now, trending at the bottom of the paper, federal government to tax Nigerians with properties in West Africa. It's on page 10. My quarrel with Bauchi Governor Dogara. You can find that up on page 34. And Development Bank gets CBN's approval. That's on page 13. Bayo.
Yeah, let's start with the story from the Senate that is dominating the papers. The Senate has handed down 6-month suspension to Senator Ali Ndume. The report by the Committee on Ethics and Privileges actually had recommended 181 days, one whole legislative year for suspension. However, it was tempered down and he was handed with a 6-month suspension. The committee was so much in a hurry to convict one of their own that they forgot to clear Dr. Bukola Saraki and Senator Milaye until they were reminded by Senator Joshua Lidani. The suspension was reduced to 6 months. Presiding Deputy Senate President told lawmakers that you always get their facts right on matters before presenting them to the chambers. Meanwhile, Senator Ali Ndume was not in the House. He is the second member of the National Assembly to be suspended this 8th legislative year. The first is, of course, Abdul Mumin Jibrin, who got suspended from the budget padding saga. There's been reactions about the suspension. A presidential advisor, the special personal assistant to the president of social media, Loretta Onochie, says that the federal lawmakers had turned themselves into self-serving trade union that work with blackmail. He said that they work with blackmail. She lamented that many patriotic and people-oriented senators are silent, succumbing to the black bullying antics of what she described as an awaiting trial cabal. Arm twisting will not succeed over patriotic consideration. Also, former Minister of Education, Obiageli Ezekwesili, also on social media, urged the youth of Nigeria to stop being entertained by the lawmakers in what she described as their tragic comedy. He urged youth to instead demand for social change. Hear her. Be laughing while tragic comedy that cost more than 100 billion every year is carried on. It's better you fight for your future. In another development, the Senate has also resolved to invite Professor Issei Sage, the chairman of the Presidential Advisory Committee Against Corruption. And he has already reacted. He says the senators had described the senators as irresponsible and childish, and in fact, they are he described them in terms that the Senate took exception to. He said that he admits that he cannot be summoned because according to section 88 and 89 of the Constitution, they cannot summon him because they don't fund him and they don't have powers over him. He said, I express my personal opinion. If you feel strong about it, please go to court, but not resort to inviting me before a committee. You are the accusers, and I'll come there and you will be the judge. They will charge me and judge me. It is unconstitutional and illegal. Meanwhile, at the Federal Executive Council yesterday, a committee was instituted to look for ways of harmonizing relations between the executive and the legislature. The committee is to be headed by Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, and other members include the 2 special assistants to the President on National Assembly matters, as well as ministers who were former members of the National Assembly. The essence, of course, is to ensure that the nominations of Mr. President for 2 ministers to replace late James Ocholi and Amina Mohammed, who went to the UN, doesn't suffer the same fate as the recommendation of resident electoral commissioners.
All right, Bayo, thanks a lot. I mean, as I said, there are a number of stories coming out of the National Assembly with particular reference to the Senate. That's also the lead story. What you just talked about now is the lead story on the front page of the Sun newspaper related to the attempts at rapprochement between the executive and the Senate. It says, face-off over SGF, Magu and Ali. Presidency seeks truce with Senate, and Osinbajo leads mediation team. Of course, the question to ask is against the background of some of the latest comments being made by some of the aides how are the senators going to react to all of that? I think that is the mutual respect that has been so. That's why you're having this mediation, right, or the continuous spat, between the executive and the legislature. Of course, if there is a perceived misbehavior from any branch of government, people are free to make their own comments. As for Senator Ali Ndume, who's been suspended for 6 months, that will be 6 calendar months, obviously. That's what it is. Because if they were going to suspend him for 181 legislative days, that would have mattered to a year. But they've given him 6 months, and in the absence of any further explanation and following on the basis of the interpretation, it will be 6 calendar months, for him to cool his heels and then return, on the basis of the terms that he's been asked to go on suspension.
Well, no, that tempers are high, and in fact, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Yakubu Dogara, said that the face-off between the National Assembly and the Executive is normal in democracy. And therefore, there should be limits, however, so that it doesn't spoil the essence of the two institutions to work for the people.
That's right. Yeah, approaching the second, the midterm for both the executive and the legislature, there will be some accounting. Let's take other headlines from the Daily Sun. An earpiece beside the nameplate of the Daily Sun, reads, says, Benue roads. There is plot to disturb contractors, and that's according to Wike. Wike is the governor of Rivers State, and he has offered to reconstruct 2 roads in Benue State, quite some distance actually, from Benue, which is in the middle belt, to Rivers, which is in the coastal part of the country. So, but Wike says there's plot to disturb contractors. And then a rider also to that says pensioners' protest vindicates him on Otom's mismanagement. Details of the story can be found on page 11. Now, other headlines there: 3 notorious kidnappers arrested in Lagos. DSS officer also, that's a dismissed DSS officer who's been arrested by the police over kidnapping. And Buhari nominates, we've already read that from other headlines, and Nigeria was under APC government, that's according to the PDP, as well as, of course, developments in the Senate. Claire.
Okay, let's quickly take a look at the front page of the Nation newspaper. Of course, it's also talking about Sage's response to his summon by the Senate. That's the front page report on that paper. If we can get that paper now, okay, there it is. And of course, the rider, lawmakers descend on presidential committee chair. Ndume suspended. Sage to senators, you have no power to summon me. Now, that's the lead story. And if we just go down a bit, of course, there are other trending stories. EFCC finds $86 million Paris Club refund in NGF's account. EFCC finds $86 million Paris Club refund in NGF's account. Now, you can also find that. Now, on the other side, UAE, of course, boost to PEG production cut compliance, also trending on the front page of the Nation.
All right, Claire, just we get into you now. Let's take a look at the lead story for the Authority newspaper. The Authority, that's the lead story. Other headlines, of course, relate to headlines that we read from other publications. The lead story for the Authority says, Dogara wants Boko Haram treatment for armed herdsmen. Dogara wants Boko Haram treatment for armed herdsmen and fears APC might lose Bauchi in 2019. Why?
Well, it is often said that when 2 elephants fight, it is the grass that suffers. But however, in the spat between Governor Wike of Rivers State and Governor Otom of Benue State, it looks as if Benue Road might be benefiting from it. One is curious about this spat. If you recall, the 2 of them were ministers in the last administration. They both resigned to go and contest election. Yes. Well, now, talking about the House of Reps, the Speaker of the House of Representatives has indicated that the Minister of Finance, Kemi Adeosun, is to be summoned to the House of Reps to explain over 302 billion pension fund. She says the Minister of National Planning, Director General PENCOM, and the head of the Pension Transition Administration, PITAD, are all to explain why pension liabilities are not receiving adequate attention. The president of the Pensioners Association, Dr. Abel Afoloyan, had briefed the Speaker that in the 2017 budget, sufficient funds are not provided for pensioners. He says, for instance, the executive submitted a bill of about 109.1 billion, leaving out about 193.2 billion, which means that many pensioners would not be paid subsequently. Already, many pensioners are owed payment. Those who retired since last August up to date are not earning anything.
All right, Bayo, thank you very much. Of course, the pension issue was one that we discussed on this program a few days ago. So it's an issue that is always trending, and we do hope that proper attention will be paid to it, not just at the federal level, but especially also at the state level and local government level, because local government employees often complain. And the states, some states are clever enough to suggest that, look, it's not their responsibility. And yet, you have the joint local, state and local government accounts. And local governments, of course, have failed on account of the fact that, you know, they are in the pockets of the state governments.
These are senior citizens, and I think they are entitled to their due.
All right. Bayo Atoyebi, we'd like to thank you for being with us this morning. See you again tomorrow.
Tomorrow will be another day. Thank you.
We'll take a short break now.
Hear the call of change. Stand up, Nigeria. Change is here and it's going to stay. Change begins with you. Oh yeah, make we go. Go so let the change begin from within. Look at you, Ogeruola. Change begins with you and me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me.
Coming up, we visit David Daniele. In the 10 months since he appeared on Airtel Touching Lives, his Center for Citizens with Disabilities has gone from strength to strength.
Thank you, Airtel. We are glad that you came.
And for Emmanuel Onyeka, his dream of completing his studies has been dashed. A tragic Okada accident in 2015 had left him an amputee.
Touching lives.
Okay, sir. You may now go in for your interview.
Thank you. Ah, my shoe. And to think I just bought this very expensive foreign shoe 2 months ago.
So sorry about your shoes. This is why I advise my friends to always patronize made in Nigeria products. See this shoe. It's made in Nigeria, and I've had it for 2 years, and it's still as good as the day I bought it.
Made in Nigeria products are good quality, and stringent government regulations and certification now mean the goods made in Nigeria meet international standards. Make the patriotic choice today. Buy right. Buy Made in Nigeria.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
All right. The big question this morning we're asking, can the CBN sustain the gains on the Naira? Well, let's quickly listen to the backgrounder by Oyeyemi Ajayi, and that will, of course, take us to our conversation.
The Central Bank of Nigeria is said to have undertaken experimental foreign exchange policies which had a telling effect on the prices of goods and services until its recent intervention. As a result, the news about the appreciation of the Nigerian Naira has been received with more cheers by Nigerians. The Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, attributed the recent appreciation of the Naira against other currencies as resulting from its market monitoring and intervention. At the moment, the CBN pegged the selling rate for deposit money banks at 360 Naira to the dollar, and it is expected to fall in days and weeks ahead if the position of the Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele, at the March Monetary Policy Committee meeting is anything to go by. This has been adjudged to be due to the continuous injection of dollars into the interbank market in order to further crash the dollar against the Naira. The CBN has injected about $1.5 billion since it started its intervention in the Forex exchange market 6 weeks ago. It is believed that the liquidity boost was geared towards stabilizing the exchange rates. Efforts of the Apex Bank have crashed dollar rates at the parallel market to between 375 naira in Lagos and 365 naira in Abuja. The CBN says it is determined to crush speculators in the market and ensure that genuine foreign exchange seekers have access to foreign currencies with ease. The CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele recently said the central bank was acting in the best interest of ordinary Nigerians, regardless of the noise from the few entrenched interests whom the bank's policies may be hurting. It is believed that if the tempo is sustained, the naira might just be a strong currency to be reckoned with, not just in Africa, but the world at large. As much as most Nigerians see the development as the right step yielding good results, the bureau de change operators are not finding it that easy at the moment. But to what effect can the CBN Forex policy be sustained? Only time will tell.
All right, thank you very much, Oyemi Ajayi, for that background report. Now we have guests with us in the Abuja studios here, as well as from our Lagos Network Center. Now, first, we would like to welcome at this time the Acting Director of Corporate Communications of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Isaac Okorafor. Mr. Okorafor, a pleasure to have you join us this morning.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
All right, and then we also have with us here an economist and former chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, Dr. Suleiman Odanusa. Dr. Odanusa, pleasure having you join us this morning.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, Claire.
Kingsley, let's move on to Lagos Network Center. We're being joined by the Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, NESG, and we're talking about Mr. Laoye Jayola. Mr. Jayola, we're glad you could find time to join us.
Good morning.
And also right there in Lagos, we have the Chairman Economic Policy Committee of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, MAN, and I'm talking about Mr. Reginald Odia. Mr. Reginald Odia, it's a pleasure having you with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you and good morning.
All right.
All right, gentlemen, once again, our pleasure to have you on the program. Let's begin by going to the Acting Director of Communications of the Central Bank to have a broader explanation, a deeper explanation of what the new Forex policy is by the CBN, because we have seen in recent weeks injection of some $1.5 billion US, and then, of course, the Naira, which had been virtually anemic, for a long time, suddenly has gained weight, measured against other international currencies. So essentially, what are we looking at in terms of the new CBN Forex policy?
Yeah, thank you so much, Kingsley, and I am happy to be here. What the results you see comes from months of study and monitoring. And when I say study, we've been studying the black market. We have always told people that the demand in this market had been a bubble, that it had no logical relationship with what genuine demand should be. And towards the end of last year, we decided to study that in all segments of the market. And we discovered that a lot of criminal activities were going on there. And that if we hived off the genuine demand for PTA, school fees, and medical fees, that market will crash. And that was what happened. And we decided, especially now that we have a very comfortable level of reserves, we decided to move at that time. And you can see what the result is. We are happy, and Nigerians are happy. And I want to preempt you by saying that we'll sustain this activity. And our aim is to ensure that we make the rates gravitate and to meet downwards and to meet the intermarket rate.
So for emphasis, Mr. Okorafor, for emphasis and for clarity, This is not a fluke.
It is not.
This is...
We mean business.
You mean business.
Yes.
And this is the result of, the demand curve impacting on the naira.
That's right.
On the foreign exchange currency.
That's right.
So he has asked, the new policy that you have initiated,
yes.
Could you expatiate on it? Could you tell us what it's all about?
Okay. This is what, based on the result of our study, we felt that, look, at this time we can comfortably supply the market. And this is the policy. What the policy entails is this, that we decided to inject money into the market through two windows. The first is to ensure that we give enough money, enough foreign exchange to banks to satisfy the demand for PTA, BTA, medical fees, and tuition. That's on one side. That's the invisibles. We also decided to steadily increase what we do in forwards for either wholesale or retail auction.
What are forwards, please?
Forwards, a forward arrangement enables a manufacturer, for instance, who will need raw materials in October to bid for them now and plan ahead. And so it reduces the pressure on us to also settle. It makes him go to sleep comfortably, hoping that by October he will be able to get his raw materials. So it reduces the pressure on the market at this time, and so also helps to tame the exchange rate. That's what we mean by forwards. And we also have been funding direct retail. In wholesale forwards, banks buy and sell. In retail, they buy on behalf of their customers. So, and we've been funding these two windows. And the aim, although the manufacturers are saying they don't have enough, but basically Nigerians should understand that we do not have enough Forex, and that what we have, we try to ration and prioritize, and that with time, we will steadily increase the supply as our reserves improve. And of course, our reserves are improving now.
Is that the reason for the strength you're having right now? Because I would have asked, why are you just initiating this policy now?
No. Before now, when our reserves hit 24, that was a very dangerous level. And we felt, and let me also tell you that everybody in the market, including both inside and outside the country, look at your reserve level. And for us, if the reserve level goes beyond 25 billion, it becomes very critical. So that was why when it was tending towards that, we had to introduce all kinds of measures. We introduced the 41 items to begin to manage demand and to ensure that what we spend our reserves on are things that will drive economic growth, employment, and allow our people to at least make use of what is left for critical imports. And so that helped to stem the rate of depletion. And of course, the developments in the Niger Delta, the president initiated a move, which the vice president handled so creditably. And so the relationship with those people there improved. And so oil started flowing. Some of those helped a whole lot. And I think we are comfortable, and we decided this is the time to move. And we moved, and that is the result.
All right, Mr. Okorafor, thank you very much. We'll come back to you later in the course of this conversation. Dr. Ndalusa, Mr. Okorafor used an expression while explaining the basis of the new Forex policy. He said, look, what we saw on the parallel market was actually a bubble, measured against actual demand and so on and so forth. A bubble normally will be associated with the capital market, as you very well know. I mean, if you were to go into, the history of corporate law, the Bubble Act in the UK and so on and so forth. Now, is it really the case that the bubble has burst and therefore where the new Forex regime is sustainable, as Mr. Okorafor has given assurance? Was there really a bubble, or was it just a panic on account of a perception of a declining economy?
Thank you very much. I would call it a foreign exchange market rascality. Because, like you said, a bubble can happen unconsciously. Things just come into the system because of a number of factors. But when you have an exchange rascality, which he also alluded to as being some criminal undertones in the way the demand issues in the market. So it was rascality. I'm happy that at least recent, the CBN has come up with a resolve to deal with this rascality. And thank God, the environment, the circumstances are quite good enough for central bank to take those actions, at least in the short term. Of course, we have our reserve at 30-point-something billion, which is a lot better than what we used to have. And two, the Niger Delta thing has kind of gone down. But you see, when you talk about managing the demand and the supply, this thing, it's a whole of game of managing the float. And because the market, in every system, you have two extremes. It's either you want a fixed exchange rate or a flexible one. And in most systems, you have managing the float because, for example, Nigeria cannot have a perfect floating market. We can't just float our currency without, because we don't have the fundamentals to support that float. And if we do that, we have overvaluation of, because the demand would definitely outstrip the supply. And then we also cannot have very rigid kind of this because there will be overvaluation. Again, we don't have the fundamental to support it. Our real exchange rate, this thing will not also be positive. So essentially, there was a rascality in the market, of course, caused by black marketers, caused by people who are flying our currencies out of the country. And of course, I don't want to go into the criminal aspect of it. I'm sure the experts are looking at that. But definitely one can commend CBN today for the resolve, because it is a must that CBN needed to intervene, because there is no way you can allow your currency to have all kinds of rates and flying without control. So I'm happy that at least they are trying to tame that that enemy of to our currency.
All right, Dr. Ndalusa, thank you very much. Let's go to our Lagos Network Studios, where, of course, we have two guests there, Manufacturers Association as well as the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. We have Mr. Jayola there. Mr. Layo Jayola, of course, we've discussed this from time to time, the fate of the Naira, which, of course, had dwindled considerably over a 12-month period until we started seeing the uptick in the past couple of weeks. From your perspective, what do you think the CBN has done? A right step to take, or perhaps a flash in the pan?
Thank you, Kingsley. A right step to take now, but what we need to do is to be a lot consistent about it, and then take all the things that we need to do together, which again the CBN is aware of. Operating the policies and ensuring that there is confidence so that it can be sustained. I'm glad that we can do this now because our external reserve went up, and so CBN can bring in as much as over $1 billion that they've done in the last couple of weeks. But the challenge we have, because when you asked us, you said we're going to be talking about can it be sustained. The challenge is that you then look at how can we do it in the short and in the medium and in the long term. So it's a step in the right direction, but we need to again begin to look at how do we get more sources of FX in, how do we ensure that those demands are tamed down, and then we can ensure that our policies are consistent and they are transparent and everybody can know what exactly we're running as a policy.
All right, thanks, Mr. Jayola. That's Mr. Reginald Odia. What does the new regime, Forex regime, mean for manufacturers?
Thank you very much again. We are still studying it. We see that the CBN is putting a lot of energy into this Forex issue. We also know that the CBN has shown a lot of concern for the manufacturers. Their first policy, which allowed for 60% of available Forex for the manufacturing sector, was a laudable one. It works to a lot of extent, taking into perspective a few things that didn't go quite well with the commercial banks. And with this new policy, we can see a drive which the CBN is making also towards manufacturing. And we think it's a two-way issue. One is for us to appreciate what you're doing, that's the CBN, and get a clarity of it. We need to better understand it. It's still not very clear to us what they have for the manufacturing sector. And the other one is for us to also consider what I will call, and we all know that, a backwards integration situation, where our demand for Forex will continue to go down because we are getting more and more local components of raw material for our manufacturing. So we think the CBN is doing well. We also think that it's in the direction of improving manufacturing, but we need to understand each other a lot more. There should be a stakeholder discussion to better understand it, appreciate it, and work within that policy as a group.
Mr. Reginald, let me stay with you because you've just, commended CBN, of course, for efforts done so far. But you've also said that for the manufacturers, you still don't understand what is in it for you. Can you be a bit more specific? What exactly is it that the manufacturers don't understand in the new CBN's initiative?
Yeah, thank you very much again. Now, this new policy has a lot of projections. For example, we have this forward demand, which the director of CBN mentioned, which means that you have to do a lot of projection. But the thing about manufacturing in Nigeria is that the bulk of our members in MAN are SMEs. The big manufacturers, as far as we are concerned, are comfortable with this because they can do a lot of forward planning, which gives them a lot of clout and opportunity to plan ahead. For the SMEs, you can plan only within your little resources. And we know that the banking policies here, the funding policies in Nigeria, does not tend to give some level of support for manufacturing. So these areas are areas we want to get clarity. We want to be able to feel that manufacturers should have enough funds to participate and be able to get involved with these new policies. And that's why I'm saying we need to understand it clearly, we need to talk about it, and we need to be able to be carried along. There are issues that are not clear for us, clear to us, and we really need to understand it. I think CBN should do that. And from time to time, I know we do meet, but with this new policy, which is only a couple of weeks old, we need to continue talking about it, dialoguing, understanding it. And we think it's actually in the right direction. But we all want to be part and benefit of it.
Mr. Odia, this might not be the right platform for a broader clarification, but I know that Mr. Okorafor may wish to also, make some clarification so that the manufacturers will also be at ease.
Yeah, I have to thank Mr. Odia for the perspective he has taken. We are prepared. Of course, we have been in constant touch with manufacturers. We want to continue that interaction. We want that engagement. We will do whatever it takes to ensure that we ease whatever difficulties that they have within the available Forex resources that we have.
He was specific on the future of small-scale manufacturers.
Yes, I'm coming to that. And it is all part of that engagement. Whatever it takes to ensure that that segment of manufacturing is taken care of. We are prepared to talk with them. And we also know that when you talk about jobs, SMEs create more jobs than the big ones, and even poverty alleviation that we are also fighting. And so it comes into it will come into our whole plan. We will engage them, like we have been doing. At this time, even when he said that they don't quite understand it, I think that engagement will resolve some of these issues.
All right, Mr. Okorafo, thank you. Just let's return to Lagos. Mr. Laoye, that's the CEO of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. I was going to ask you a question on that, but I will pause in the meantime and then still stay with our guest in the Abuja studios. Let's come to Dr. Ndanusa. Dr. Ndanusa, one of the arguments we heard in recent times on account of the raft of measures that the CBN had taken, which measures turned out not to be particularly effective until what we saw recently, was that, look, why sell 60% of your Forex to manufacturers? What is the quantum of their contribution to the GDP? What is the quantum of their consumption? And then we also saw a campaign mounting with regard to the 41 items or so, including headpans and wheelbarrows and perhaps toothpicks and others, which had been barred from access to Forex. Now, why did those measures not work quite well at that time? And now that we are seeing this new policy kicked in and yielding results, even in the short term, are we likely to return to the past and say, okay, those measures didn't quite work, let's open the floodgates again? You know the way the policy dynamic is in Nigeria. I say, look, open the floodgates again, and before you know it, the foreign reserves go down. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think the Central Bank of Nigeria has learned a lot during this period. And like the director here has said, they've been studying. I believe that some of those measures were taken at the period where the height of the firefighting was very serious. When there is fire in the mountain, you even find some quite confusion. The firefighters might even be bumping at each other. So I take it that CBN has gone through the experience curve and are stabilizing. That is, of course, showing in what CBN is resolving to do now. When that came, it was a very curious policy, even though, of course, the manufacturing sector is very important. It offers a lot of employment, especially if you include the smaller manufacturers and the big ones. So I was looking at the template. What are the benchmarks that are used to give that kind of priority to the manufacturers? Could it be their contribution to GDP? Obviously, no. They are contributing, but if you look at other sectors that are, you begin to wonder, could it also be the employment, the number of, because we have to have policy benchmarks to support whatever. But I take it that CBN has seen that it has not quite worked. Even the manufacturers are complaining because what is then the criteria of identifying among the manufacturers those who should be supported? Are they the export-oriented manufacturers? Are those the ones that are actually integrating backwards, just like he said, creating more components here in Nigeria? So it's a whole lot of policy forest there that CBN had to sort out. But again, I think I'm happy they are beginning to see. Going forward, therefore, it will be a cocktail of policies. You see, it may not be the kind of 60%, but they will identify those areas that need to be supported. And of course, manufacturing will be one, but not in a way that you are 60% of
is
the
it too much?
I believe 60% is definitely too much. Given, I mean, it's 60% of the Forex is given to manufacturers, because you find that it is the Pareto principle. I mean, during recession, what you are looking for is to create a lot of activities in a way that at least people will be employed, there will be more liquidity in the system, etc. So you look at which of the sectors do you apply some of this Forex that will kinetize, create the kinetic energy in the economy that you need. This is recession. Because if the conversion cycle in the manufacturing takes time, you are looking for quick converters so that you can, which is also helpful to the manufacturing sector. So it has to be a cocktail. There has to be time, and you have to sequence them. You keep looking at them, and I think that's what CBN must have been doing. But they are stabilizing now, and they are resolving to take them on one after the other.
Mr. Okorafor, yes, you want to justify the 60%?
Well, you see, we don't just do things. At the time that decision was taken, we considered quite a number of issues. One of them was jobs, and we looked at jobs, and we saw that the critical inputs, raw materials, plant and machinery, that were needed to sustain the level of employment in the country. And manufacturing has a lot of it, and so we devoted that. And of course, it wasn't just, that was not the only measure. We also felt that, look, to even create more jobs, we came up with the 41 items, both to manage the demand and to also create jobs in Nigeria, especially in agriculture, and quite a lot of manufacturing too. And we are happy to report that that singular policy has done what several decades of talks and hot air on import substitution and local support for local industry hasn't been able to do. Now, it has also affected a national orientation. Nigerians now eat made in Nigeria rice. People are adopting made in. If you go to the shopping malls, we used to import 20 million eggs from South Africa. We used to import meat from Zambia. Apples, English pear, cucumber, carrots, have it. Name it. Now, all over the shopping malls, Nigerian farmers are supplying today. Now, so you can't just discuss one item in isolation. You have to look at the cocktail of instruments in that policy. So we are happy to say that, look, we are succeeding. And there are people who are saying, no, disband these 41 items. And do you know the implication? That all the manufacturers who have invested, introduced several production lines to satisfy the local demand, all the farmers in Kebbi State and 13 other states who have borrowed money and who are producing and selling and making profit, becoming millionaires, that they should all die off. And so that we should continue the same movement. When things get hard, we squeeze. When things ease up, we go back to our old ways. This is the time to ensure that as a nation, that we take all the measures necessary to consolidate our economy, make sure that we begin to manufacture what we need, feed our people first, and then add value to export.
In other words, what you are saying, Mr. Okorafor, is that the CBN is unlikely to shift from, the 41 items that remain excluded from the, shall we say, official or interbank window.
We have been receiving correspondence from from all over the country that we should increase it to 100.
That's the items.
Yes, but I'm not saying we are considering that. Right. But we need to answer this question. Should we open the floodgates for these farmers to also go back in poverty and in penury? That is the question. You see, when we make a policy, we consider the totality of the welfare of this economy. And what we mean by that is that we can't just talk about people who live in Lagos and Abuja and Port Harcourt. We talk about the rural people. And we have undertaken to be a people-focused central bank. And that guides our policies. Since 2014, that decision was taken. And people who say we should float the Naira, and you begin to ask, in whose interest are they speaking? You float the Naira, do you know the implications? Yeah, the people who have hoarded the foreign exchange will come and do that, and maybe buy off the banks who will also be in trouble as a result of that. But what of the millions of Nigerians whose salaries have not been paid for some months, and who have to depend on those who are receiving salaries now? And then when you float the Naira, maybe the thing will go to 700 or 1,000. Then even those who receive salaries cannot buy anything with them. Can you imagine what will happen in this country?
Mr. Kurafo, if you sustain the 41 items the way it is now, yes, do you also consider the fact that those, who patronize those items will continue to source for foreign exchange at the parallel market? And then how do you begin to tame the rascality that Mr. Ndanusa talked about?
Now, as time goes on, you see, no item on that list was just chosen. We analyzed what has been the demand in the past, what is the contribution of this to employment, and all that. We didn't just come up with a list. And that is not to say that it will continue forever. Of course, it's not likely to continue forever. But within this period, we need to sustain it to ensure that we do not, how do I put it? That we do not put salt into our own pap. I don't know if you put salt in your pap, it gets what?
You don't take pap with salt or something?
No,
you take sugar or honey.
If you're making your pap and you add salt there, what you have will be water.
Okay, all right. Well, I don't know. I don't know, but it's a serious issue that we are discussing. Dr. Ndanusa, we'll come back to you. We're going back to our Lagos Network Center, where a third guest has just joined the MAN representative. That's Mr. Reginald Odia and Mr. Lauye Jayola of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. Joining us, of course, another familiar face on Good Morning Nigeria. It's been with us from time to time when we're discussing the state and fate of the Naira. It's Alhaji Mohammed Ali Gwadabe, President, Association of Bureau de Change Operators of Nigeria. Alhaji Gwadabe, a pleasure to have you join us this morning.
Good morning, Mr. Kinsley. I appreciate it.
All right, and straight away, we are seeing what the Naira is looking like now. In the few weeks, to the intervention of the CBN, Naira went at some point to 520 in the hands of your members, who are now also crying that they are virtually being put out of business. Now, Dr. Ndanusa here says, well, we had some rascals who were operating in the Forex market. Mr. Okorafor, the CBN Acting Director of Corporate Communications, says it was all a bubble. What is your reaction to what is playing out now? I mean, this is a market, free market. Your members gained in the past, and they are losing now. Why are you crying?
First and foremost, I want to commend the Central Bank of Nigeria for the liquidity in the market, because the severity of the Naira is the severity of the nation. And the sustainability of the strength in the market is not a luck, but it's a choice that all of us Nigerians have to make. In terms of the accusation, I think there is the need for clarifications or lack of understanding. It's unfortunately most of even the top Nigerians, policymakers, they don't even know that the licensed bureau de change are licensed by the Central Bank of Nigeria, and they also have obligatory requirements which they always meet on daily basis, on weekly basis, on monthly basis, on biannual basis, and annual basis. So these are some of the criteria that distinct us from the parallel market operators. Well, as long as there are human beings, you must have some deviance. I'm not saying that there are some licensed BDC that are totally out of infractions. But you see, it's not enough for just mere infraction for a regulator to come, especially in the media, to say that that operator is a rascal, being licensed by the Central Bank of Nigeria. If travelers commit infraction, for instance, in the UK, I don't think the governor of the Central Bank of England will come out and condemn travelers just because they have committed infractions. So the criminalization of the entire subsector of the BDCs is not acceptable by us, because we are Nigerians and we are licensed by the Central Bank of Nigeria, and we also play by the rules as I'm talking to you. And on the part of the association, we are doing so many things in terms of automation, in terms of enlightenment, to ensure that our operations are transparent, our operations are accountable, our operations are secure. As I'm talking to you, just yesterday, we signed an agreement with Nigerian Interbank Settlement System, whereby each BDC will be onboarded into their platform to enable us first validate, verify e-passport and BVN number. So these are the things we are doing to create transparency, to create accountability, to create security into the system. In terms of the sustainability, like I said, no nation will freely allow its own currency to devaluate. What we have seen before is as a result of past mistakes of so many policies that have been practiced before. But we must also commend the doggedness of the Central Bank of Nigeria. They are, in fact, during the present governor regime, it is during his first tenure that we have seen the merger of the whole Dutch auction system and the retail Dutch auction system. It's not an easy task for the CBN management to collapse that too. And he set the pace for what we have been seeing today. Just yesterday, he also removed one of the basic challenges that is facing the market, which is the disparity in applicable exchange rate between the banks and the BDCs. That was one of the major reasons of our cries. Because you are saying for one of our competitors to sell at 360 and we to go and buy at 381, we said the bases are not comparable at all. While banks are to sell at 360, the parallel market, which is also injurious to our own operation, is even due at 375. So if you insist the licensed BDC should go at 381, how do we survive? But we appreciate the understanding, the listening of the central bank governor, because as at yesterday, he has also reviewed the BDC rate from 381 to 360, and for us to sell at 362. So the achievement we have received in terms of the sustainability is a combination of different behaviors. The CBN is doing its own, the operators, the security agencies. I must commend the effort of the security agencies also because of their surveillance at our exit point. I mean the airport, the borders. The surveillance of the security at those exit points have helped in reducing frivolous demand of about 80% in the market. And that's why we're seeing sustainability of this. It's not even the matter of injection. Also operators in the market, I'm talking on the banks, you know, they have been favored as one of the, yes, I don't have any criticism about that, because the banking industry must always begin to have the attention of the regulator. Because if there is any crisis there, it will be systematic. Everybody will suffer for it. So I don't have blame for bailing them out. I don't have blame for helping them to survive in the economy. But like one of my brothers have stated there must always be principle of Pareto equality. If you are giving the banks such volumes, also consider the BDCs to give them volume. I can assure you, we told the CBN will remain the potent tool, the effective instrument. The CBN have been using us as a laboratory apparatus for a very long time to have achieved convergence and merger of exchange rates. So we can continue to do it for them. All we need, they have done one for us. They have given us the same applicable exchange rate. They should also look at our volume. The unutilized funds, the CBN, the banks are returning. Let the CBN begin to apply those funds to the BDC. I can assure you we'll continue to break this rate. Also, the issue of even Nigerians. I want to appeal to Nigerians. We need to contribute. We need to help the public. For instance, you have an opportunity to go to the bank and buy money at 360. To go to the bank and buy money, to the BDC and buy money at 362. Then why patronizing the parallel market operators? So we are also put a proposal as an association to see how we can certify, to see how we can, bring them those, like what they are doing in the South now, trying to bring all these illegal refineries, making them legal. We have also sent a proposal on that. Thirdly, we have been looking on how to harness diaspora remittances. And other clients, the BDCs are the ones that have direct agencies. Now that the CBN have removed clause, exclusivity clause in the agreement whereby a bank cannot be exclusively an agent of an IMTO, that should also be extended to BDC, because that will enable the BDC to source cheaper funds and bring more volumes, and at the end of the day, it will help the convergence drive of the Central Bank of Nigeria.
All right. Alhaji Mohammed Gwadabe, but thank you very much for your thoughts. But I think there was a misconstruction when you said the Apex regulator was describing BDC operators as rascals. That's not correct. What he said, you had not joined, we had not introduced you at the time. He said that there was a bubble in the foreign exchange market. And then our other guest here in the studio, with us in the Abuja studio, Dr. Suleiman Dausa, former chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission, indicated that what we saw was rascality in the foreign exchange market. He didn't then go ahead to identify that, and I'm sure that you are familiar with this phrase. 3 branches of government have sometimes been referred to, depending on who the actors are, as rascals. You have judicial rascality, executive rascality, as well as legislative rascality. It wasn't intended as an insult, but thanks a lot for your response. We'll come back to you later on in the course of the conversation. Mr. Jayola, the question I was going to ask you earlier is as follows. Now, from the explanation provided by Alhaji Gwadabe, we still have the problem of multiple exchange rates. Now we have the interbank rate. The CBN is working furiously at that, and we are seeing the rate at the BDC, and then Alhaji Gwadabe is hinting at the parallel market rate. And of course, there are also other discriminatory rates that may from time to time pop up, either for pilgrimage or whoever. I don't know whether that is still going to operate now. From your perspective, how can we deal with what some observers described as a menace of multiple exchange rates, which of course caused part of the distortion in the past?
Thank you very much, Kingsley. I don't know whether, again, in the course of this period, we can talk about how to sustain this rate, because I've seen a lot of chest beating. We've done this, we've done that. Well, we didn't need to get here anyway. If you are a good student of foreign exchange issues in Nigeria, from 1985 to date, all of these have replayed and replayed and replayed. And so we can learn from experience and avoid some of this hiccup. I agree with you that we can have, at the time we had close to 7 different rates in the market. The CBN have a responsibility to ensure that it's convergence. There are ways you can support a sector that is critical beyond, these FS rate differentials. There are a number of things that you can do to encourage manufacturers, to encourage SMEs, to ensure that they are competitive and to ensure that they can at least bring their operation to par, rather than use different rates for foreign exchange. We are a firm believer on the fact that let the market be clear about the rates. The interbank market used to be a very clear rate where anybody can go to and see. And the central bank, of course, by their own intention, can then intervene and then moderate the performances at that market by either selling when they need to sell or buying when they need to buy. This nation should not have multiplicity of rates. So we commend what is being done, and what we will say is that, look, rather than have a section for this, all people, one for pilgrimages, one for manufacture, let everybody go to the official interbank market and buy. Again, I listened to some discussions regarding to putting 60% to this, 40% for this. This allocation thing never worked. And CBN again have it in their records when they either allocate foreign currency or allocate credit, that it doesn't work. What then happens is that people then manipulate. And when I heard Okra was saying that they contribute jobs, it is a proven record in this nation that 85% of jobs are created by MSMEs, and we need to do a lot to sustain them. So as much as possible, we should sit down and ask ourselves, how can we make our manufacturers perform very well? How can we make our MSMEs perform very well without actually thinking with FX and having one allocation to the other or one? There are critical sectors, of course, that the central bank can invest in, and they should look at how can we support these sectors. But I agree with you, remove all those polarity of exchange rates in the market by having an interbank rate that is transparent, that people can have bid offer rates, and it is clear. Everybody can see it, and foreigners can see it. So if I'm an investor and I'm coming to Nigeria, all I need to do is to look at the screen and say, what is the rate today? What is the rate tomorrow? And then, whether it's, happily they are doing some forwards, and when we move to some futures and some other things, and they can see clearly what is the rate, and so they can plan. I don't have to be asking, my money, will it go to the NNPC, FX market, or it's going to one sector or the other? I'm glad that they said that is a step that they've taken, and I want to plead with them that they should follow it through. And that guideline, that beautiful guideline that they issued sometimes in June, they should now begin to operationalize it. When that guideline was issued, everybody commended it. But again, like what I said, maybe the problem is that there have been enough supply. But we should be asking ourselves, how can we get more supply? What if oil price, for sake of any argument, drop to about $40 again? What will happen to us? So we have a responsibility of ensuring that we have more supply. And that was something that Mr. Odiachi said about backward integration. How do we encourage people to source locally? How do we encourage people to love what we plant and we produce here in Nigeria? And those are the things at the NESG we talked about. We're talking about made in Nigeria and making in Nigeria. So there's a lot of things that need to be done. This is just one step out of many. And I hope, Kingsley, in the course of this program, we can talk about how do we sustain this, because it's a step in the right direction. We should look at a rate that is optimal, that is clear to all of us, so that there are no arbitrage opportunities for anybody, whether you are private sector or public sector, whether you're a government or whether you're a manufacturer or a rascal out there who want to take advantage of the market. The fact is that once a market creates arbitrage opportunities, everybody will go in there and take advantage of it. So it's important to ensure there are no arbitrage opportunities. So it's a good step in the right direction.
Jayola, thank you very much for all that you have said. And I know that Mr. Okorafor here of the CBN is itching to, of course, respond to some of the issues that you've raised. Mr. Isaac Okorafor.
Yes, I just want to clarify a few issues. When we say manufacturing, MSMEs are inclusive. So it's not like the manufacturing is meant for the big ones, no. So they are all part of it. That's one clarification I wanted to make. The second one is that BDCs, we license BDCs, they are part of the market. They are a very key segment in the market. Otherwise, they wouldn't be existing. So, and we have been collaborating with them to a very large extent. And we appreciate the contributions of the organized ones. When we say primary market, we don't mean the BDCs. We mean those who are not licensed by us, who do illegal activities. So I needed to clarify that. Then I also, Mr. Jayola said something about allowing the market to determine the exchange rate. Let anybody tell me one country in the world, just one, that allows the value of his currency to be determined by the market.
All right, you already addressed that when you were speaking earlier. Mr. Okorafor, yes. What about the multiple exchange rates?
Now, you can see what is happening. Our recent activities have begun to unite some of the rates. You can see the BDC rates are coming to meet the rate at which we sell to banks for invisibles. You can see that. This is something that's happened. We have started it. It is going to continue. When people say whether this is sustainable, I've been saying yes, it is sustainable. And I said it here on this program, that our objective is to ensure that all the rates gravitate down towards the interbank rate. And we are going to achieve that. And he talked about backward integration. While we were doing this at the foreign exchange market, we have gone ahead to introduce the Anchor Borrowers Program and several other ones, trying to fund integration. If you look at the results from Okomo Oil, Presco, go and read their reports. They are quoted. Go and read their reports for last year. You will see a very remarkable improvement in their earnings, in their profits. Much of that is due to what we have done.
All right, Dr. Ondonasa.
Yes. Well, I agree with Jayola in terms of the multiple rates. I believe that there is a need. The fact that you are managing a float system of exchange does not mean you should have multiple rates. There has to be a very transparent way of determining the price. The government can intervene through supply or demand management. Those are the enablers. But the price itself must be determined, because there is a difference between devaluation and appreciation or depreciation of the naira. One is a deliberate government policy, and the other is market. If you leave everything to the market, you know you are going to have a problem. I agree with the director for CBN that there is no system that has a pure end of that continent where everything is left. There is a fiat factor in the determination of any price. There is a fiat factor. And that is because of the policy of government, what government wants to achieve for the economy. But to have 6, 7 different rates definitely is a little too rowdy for me. Okay. Because we can do that, we can have, somebody mentioned the issue of the diaspora guy. The diaspora people also want good price. They want a price that is transparently determined. The fact that they are sending money does not mean they should sell it cheap. So there has to be a template, there has to be a platform where these prices are determined. That is why in the capital market we have an exchange, we have a security exchange. Even in the bond market now, prices are determined transparently. So, but government using policy, and that is where the fiscal and monetary policy will come together. If you want to enhance or give incentives to the manufacturers, then there has to be a meeting of the fiscal policy and the monetary policy. The manufacturer will buy the price that is determined transparently, and then the fiscal policy will give certain incentives that are not given to other sectors to ensure that the cost, the eventual cost to the manufacturer is lower because of the incentives, tax incentives and other incentives that are given. These things cannot be done alone. The CBN or monetary policy cannot operate. You cannot incentivize manufacturers alone as CBN. It's not done. You will do your best, but you have to work with the fiscal arm of the economy to ensure that while you are determining price, a uniform price for the market, transparently determined, you also can discriminate by way of policy depending on the emphasis or whatever the economy feels that sector can provide at that point in time.
Dr. Ndore, so the point you just made now is important, but a couple of weeks ago there was a report about a first-time meeting, as it were, involving the monetary authorities, that is CBN, fiscal authority, that's Ministry of Finance, and Trade, that's the Ministry of Trade and Industry and Investment. We do hope that all of this, in terms of policy harmonization, would gel. But let's return to Manufacturer Association of Nigeria. That's the head of the economic desk of MAN, Mr. Reginald Odia. Mr. Reginald Odia, please, let's take a look at this. What, on the basis of the explanations provided already by the CBN as well as matters arising from our ongoing conversation, what concerns would you have with regard to sometimes the role that the banks might play? Yes, you say go to your banks and have access to Forex, whether for visible or invisible, whether for PTA, BTA, or whatever. Open Forex outlets at terminals, in airports, and so on and so forth. Are the banks likely to be the fly in the ointment in all of this arrangement?
Thank you very much. Somehow, commercial banks or the money banks have had perhaps difficulties in the way they manage Forex and things like this. We think that the CBN should also do a little more by monitoring. You don't allocate so much to them and allow them to do it all alone. If the CBN follows through, then I think there will be a little bit of sanity. Because the banks are, they are professionals, they are made and they are ready to work. But somehow, we have bits of rascality, as we've said here. And unless there is good monitoring, you continue to have problems. But let me go a little back to what the director of CBN said about these 41 items. I agree with him completely that it is the right way to go to remove them from exclusive list of the CBN. But we also got worried, and I think we had spoken with them many times in connection with this, that these 41 items were listed and documented without due or adequate consultation with stakeholders. And when we analyzed them, we found that these items actually are made of about 109 or thereabout items that are combined And when you look at their tariff heads, they spread into, this kind of number. And there are many items that are actually needed as raw materials which are not locally available, that are part of it. And there are many also that are locally manufactured which were not captured. So we are trying to develop a template which we can present to CBN again to say, look, these 41 items, this is the breakdown. And I think we've done it. And we want these ones to be added so that at the end of the day, we will not be looking at just 41 items. We'll be looking at far more. In fact, we should be looking at over 100 items that should be on that list, which are locally made and can be locally made. Because we're not just looking at what is currently locally made, but we're looking at what we can produce within the capacity and empowerment of what we are receiving from CBN and from the economy. So that's one. And I think the other one I also want to say is that I appreciate what the CBN has done so far and are doing, because they all, as far as I'm concerned, go to support the real sector. And the real sector, to my view, is agriculture and manufacturing. There are other sectors that are important. And those two sectors, if we put in enough effort, it will create huge jobs for the economy. It will also create food, and it will eliminate a lot of items that we currently import. So we need support. So when they had this 60% of Forex for manufacturing, to be honest with you, it was a well-spread item. It went into agriculture, especially agro-allied and all that, which are part of manufacturing. So I wouldn't want us to begin to feel that manufacturers are taking advantage and CBN is giving them all the advantage. I think it's not right. I think for my view and the view of man, what CBN is doing is the right way to go. Engaging all the sectors, discussing about it. We all make mistakes, and when we make mistakes, we correct ourselves by way of dialogue and openness. We need transparency in the process. We need to carry everybody along in the process so that at the end of the day, we can all be seen to be achieving the same objective. That is what I will say for now.
Okay, Mr. Reginald, let me also stay with you just before we go on a short break, and I'd like you to clarify this. Now, we've all been given credit to the CBN for this initiative, for the intervention, but we're also told that some amount of money that the CBN injected into the system, into the interbanks, were not totally cleared by the interbanks. And indeed, some of them were also, not fully utilized and were returned, to the CBN, which gives us an indication that it's not really CBN's interjection of, funds, Forex, into the system that's responsible for, the gains, but demand and supply. So the question is, in the event that the waters in the Niger Delta is stirred and the reserves, goes down again, what happened? Can the Naira, gains on the Naira be sustained? That's my question.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me say this. The policy we have as manufacturers is to encourage as much as possible local production. And I'm happy to say that government in all the sectors are supporting, and they are making a lot of noise about patronizing made in Nigerian products. I think this is the way to go. And for us as manufacturers, what we must also do is what I've talked about, this backwards integration. We must begin to look at what we can produce locally and what we can use to produce. Once we begin to do this, the demand for raw materials and even machineries will begin to come down in terms of Forex requirements. There are also areas where government should come in. For example, the machine factory that was developed, it's not Ajokuta, but machine tool somewhere in Oshobo. It is surprising to us that all that investment at the moment is going into nothingness. Those are key infrastructure that will help in developing, for example, machinery. So we need to have that. The steel also is very important for us. So these key areas, while CBN is doing their best, I think government also should be intervening to make sure that all these things are available so that we can take advantage of it to reduce our cost. And once the cost of imports, especially raw materials and machineries, are going down, then of course the demand will continue to go down. And sustainability of the Forex to the Forex market will be very much assured. So this is our thinking. I think it's a two-way thing where we as manufacturers are doing our best to cut down our demand, and everybody, all hands on deck on that. And that will, in the end, spin off quite some benefits that will come into the Forex market. Because for me, Nigeria has been more or less a foreign exchange demand economy. We import virtually everything. And it's only recently that we now begin to think and begin to perform, looking inwards and looking at things we can do, thereby reducing this cost of demand. So it has to be sustained, that we continue to consume locally made products and encourage them and do the best we can to make sure that it continues.
Right, Mr. Reginald Odia, thank you. Gentlemen, we'll just pause a while, take a short break, and when we come back, we've got a lot of reactions coming in from, of course, the viewer out there.
Vote for me, and I will turn night into day.
Vote me, I will ban for more importation. Everybody will start eating turkey and chicken.
Put me in power, and I will bring winter to West Africa.
I'll turn all the taxi into plane.
Campaign promises. Another hilarious episode of Professor John Bull, your rib-cracking comedy. Find out the true gist of election violence, betrayals, and promises as Olani goes head-to-head with Udo.
You have money. Who you mean?
Showing at 8:30 p.m. every Tuesday and Friday on NTA Network International and Star Times.
By the time I become the chairman, I will make you my special advisor.
Why not go make me money advisor?
What is wrong with you, my daughter? That is why people will look at politicians as thieves.
Over and out.
Brought to you by Glow.
Welcome to the new speed.
The name of my school is Comprehensive Development Secondary School Away. Before now, the school environment was dull, not active and bright. It wasn't beautiful as it is now.
Yeah, our school is now more beautiful than before and very tidy.
I like my school because we have qualified and equipped teachers.
This is the new Imo State, where education is free. The Imo Rescue Mission. Imo must be better.
Helen! Your kitchen gets 10 out of 10. Thank you. This also gets a 10. Should we see the toilet now? Sure. This gets just 1.
It is clean.
But not perfect 10.
Better than my detergent and bleach? Impossible.
Challenge? Try Apex compared to bleach and detergent. Apex sticker formulation removes yellow stains times better, giving you a sparkling clean toilet.
Wow.
Now you also take that?
Perfect 10X challenge.
Also available in 200 ml pack for 200 naira only.
All right, welcome back. You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria live here on the network service of the NTA, and we've got tweets coming in. Time to read them, Kingsley.
All right, as you said, Claire, a number of tweets. Daily Jack Solomon, one of our regulars, tweets. Nigerians hope that the gain of the Naira will be sustained and not be a mere palliative to the economic recession.
All right, and Ibrahim Tudu also tweets, the CBN has succeeded in reducing about 60% assault on the Naira by crushing the bullish dollar and its holders. We shall get there.
All right, there's another one from Ibrahim Tudu just there. It says, for the Naira to sustain the gains, the CBN must fight the monsters, currency manipulators, black marketeers, hoarders, and money launderers.
Okay, Festus Akimboyewa tweets, while recent steep rise in the Naira fortunes is welcomed, it's too early to conclude that a broad-based Naira recovery is here to stay.
Franklin, a former, tweets, the policy that is driving the dollar down is purely cosmetic. The Naira gets weak when oil prices plummet again.
Okay, this one is simply Cowboy, and it tweets, the real problem was CBN's policy swings. CBN created the problem. It was simply the law of supply and demand at work. No brainer, he says.
And then, of course, we have this again from Festus Akimboyewa. It says the CBN intervention in the Forex market and the combative tone of the CBN governor will not sustain the gains of the Naira if local production isn't encouraged.
All right. Mahmoud Haman, Kingsley, have you taken that?
No, we haven't taken Mahmoud yet. Yes.
Mahmoud Haman tweets, the collapse of the Naira was artificial as it was allegedly triggered by CBN directors who own BDCs even as they regulate the Forex.
All right, and then we have this from Law Alpha C. It says, even if some good foreign currencies were injected into the system, the Naira would appreciate on its own by discouraging importation.
All right, Ahmed Gambo Ibrahim tweets, this policy is a good policy, but to sustain it, we must diversify our economy. If not, I say it as a stumbling one as usual.
Jack Solomon, again, can we call the Naira recovery a trend yet? Now, this can be a trend when the CBN is able to sustain it for at least a quarter.
All right, this is simply Hausa Ibadan 16. CBN is doing a great job, but there is need for CBN to bring all the price of dollar to the same price for better transparency.
Law Alpha C again. The present regime style of revamping the economy is germane by making sure that our country is not a dumping ground for all kinds of items.
Ibrahim Tudo, we almost killed the Naira ourselves. School fees, airline fares, shoppings, and even lawmakers and government officials pay in dollars.
All right, then we have this from Francis Obi. Says the CBN must monitor and ensure that dollars are utilized for the intended purpose and defaulters punished.
And Duza Baba tweets, Nigeria learned from experience of others, e.g. South Korea, that rationed Forex to target industries under PAC in 70s and 80s.
And then we have this from Eguando Jeff. How can the CBN penalize or withdraw the licenses of BDCs that sell humongous Forex to politicians for laundering and then to also keep at home?
And Francis Obi again tweets, the objections being expressed by the BDCs should be addressed and amicable solutions sought. But I plead that each and everyone should make sacrifices.
All right, this from Ibn Bature. It tweets, it's a welcome development to raise the number of items banned or barred rather from 41 to 100, so Nigerians will have no choice but to produce what they need. By the way, it's not the CBN acting director of corporate communications did not say that the items had been increased to 100. He did indicate that there were requests for raising the number from 41 to 100, and that indeed the number still remains at 41.
All right, Suleiman Yusuf tweets, with what I've heard so far, excuse me, I think the CBN is on course as much as our foreign reserve keeps on increasing.
All right, then we also have this from Change to Progress. It's a well done to the central bank for the good job they've done after the initial tight control because of the lack of dollars. We need to sustain the current effort.
And Kenny Wole Oshinaya tweets, the CBN should put in place a structure that will block such criminality and rascalities from occurring in future.
Well, Eguando Jeff tweets, I couldn't get Forex on my BTA at a bank yesterday, and I had to approach a BDC that sold at 385 for me, that was yesterday, in Benin City. Eguando Tony Jeff said he couldn't get Forex for his BTA, but got at BDC for 385.
All right, Festus Akiboyewa tweets, the current interest rate will not stimulate local production and encourage private sector employment. Therefore, Naira can still crash.
And then Kenny Oshineye tweets, now that the CBN has woken up to their duties, kudos to them. And Mr. President and the Federal Executive Council, let this reflect on the table of the masses.
And Clifford Aguegusi tweets, what image does the Naira project? A battered currency, the CBN must present a Naira that people will be proud to handle.
Well, we have this, it's not chest beating, by the way. This is from one of our viewers, Eguando Tony Jeff, the gentleman who said he couldn't get Forex yesterday at the bank. He says, if you are not watching NTA Good Morning Nigeria, you are missing serious national discourse. Mr. Joye Olia, serious and sound mind, along with the other guests. Thank you.
I think we also have other tweets, Kingsley. Yeah. Clifford, Change to Progress, and Clifford, all, of course, giving us different perspectives to this discussion.
That's
yes.
right. That's right. Let's, of course, we're on the home stretch now. There's really enough time for us to often exhaust all the angles to a particular issue. But let's get the closing thoughts now of our guests. First, we'll begin from our Lagos Network Center, the CEO of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. Ultimately, I mean, it's as you indicated, there's been quite some chest beating. But what, in your opinion, would be the proper evaluation of the direct impact or indirect impact of the CBN intervention in the Forex market, where we start taking a critical look at the numbers? Are we going to see a knock-on effect, for instance, on the rate of inflation? Are we going to see a knock-on effect, for instance, on a slide in the unemployment numbers? And then what are we going to see? An uptick in our trade and so on and so forth. What exactly would you like to see others, who are relevant in this mix do to support the new monetary policy by way of Forex regime introduced by the CBN? Mr. Jayola, I said that. That's the CEO of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group.
Right direction. And if you listen to Dr. Ndanusa, there has to be a combination, a cocktail of many menus. The fiscal policy, the trade policies, all of them should work together. Again, I commend and I'm aware government is working on things like the ease of doing business. They are concerned about our competitiveness. And there's a lot to focus, again, from the central bank angle too, again, to say, how do we get local manufacturing, local production? I'm aware that laws and bills are being worked on to ensure that even there is ease of doing things locally. The regulatory authorities are all doing this. So this is a step in the right direction. We just need to continue with the policy and let us not have some somersault. Let's bring more transparency. Let's have one unified window that is cleared, and CBN can use demand and supply to mop up and to make sure the rates are applicable where it should be. In fact, I will beg the CBN, if the rate decline, if the rate appreciate beyond what they want, let them buy and keep stock so that when the time comes again, they can inject. But it's a cocktail of many. And I like the economic recovery program that is out, plan that is out. All of this put together will give us to where we want so that we can have employment, local demands, and of course, Nigeria then will have a stronger currency.
All right, let's quickly take on, of course, the president of BDCs, Malam Aminu Gwadebe. Malam Gwadebe, quickly, what do you prefer as a way to sustain the Naira? And also talk to us why you think the demand for Forex, has been dwindling.
First and foremost, we have to, I don't have much to say differently, but the same thing. Nigeria is an import-dependent country. And if you are an import-dependent country, then you cannot control the currency of import. The currency of import now is the dollar. The CBN have started in the right direction by localizing production. And with that, in rice, about 8,000 millionaires have been created in Zamfara State. We have seen synergy between Lagos State and Zamfara State in terms of rice production. So that should be sustained. They should also look into other agricultural products like cocoa. They should replicate that in the southwest. They should also move to southeast and replicate that for the oil, the palm oil, so that it could be a united something. Two, the infrastructure. I must commend the federal government because if you even look at the railway in the southwest here, you have Lagos, Kaduna. In the north central, north, you have Abuja, Kano. Southeast also having that. So such infrastructure should be continued. Then harmonization of the various exchange rate is very, very good. It's key. It's fundamental. And the CBN have started that in the right direction by closing some of these gaps and arbitrages. Then finally also, we should diversify the sources of foreign exchange. We should not rely, because already there is a threat. The oil crude, the U.S. crude oil is already giving us a heavy, big threat. Netherlands have dropped their imports from us from 9.1 million barrels per day to about 3.7 million barrels per day. So they shift their demand to the United States of America. Also, the CBN should stop being the only market player in the market, because right now we don't even see participation of the banks. What the banks do is just to prepare bid form and go to the market and buy. They have not even sell even up to $10,000. I'm not seeing a bank that have so far intervened in the interbank foreign exchange market. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Mr. Reginald Odia, can we get your closing thoughts very briefly? There are other items you'd like to speak to.
Thank you very much. First, I want to thank you for this organization and say that that's manufacturers, as it were, are ready to continue to do their best to ensure that we sustain this kind of situation where first, demand for Forex continues to go down. And the other thing also we will encourage is what we call export. There is a process that government started a few years ago, which is called this Export Expansion Grant, given to exporters. I know that the last couple of months, there's been huge export from manufacturers. And it's a major source of foreign exchange earning if we get it right. We want government to look at that again so that we can encourage export. There are so many products that we are currently exporting, preparing for export, but you need to encourage the manufacturers that gets into that. So that area I want government to look at.
All right, gentlemen, I'm afraid we shan't be taking more reactions because time is almost against us. So I'd just like to appreciate all of you. Let me start with Mr. Reginald Odia, who is the Chairman, Economic Policy Committee of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. I'd like to thank you very much in Lagos. Chief Executive Officer of the NESG, Mr. Laoye Jayola, many thanks to you, as well as, of course, Malam Aminu Gwadebe, President, Association of Bureau de Change Operators of Nigeria, BDCs. I'd like to thank you, gentlemen from Lagos. Have a wonderful day. And gentlemen here, I also like to thank you, Mr. Isaac Okorafo. I'm sorry, you don't have time to talk. Thank you. And Dr. Suleiman Danusa, thank you very much. All right. And that's Good Morning Nigeria discussion. Of course, segment of the program. Do we have time to go?
No, unfortunately, I mean, we're discussing money matters, and we've eaten deep into our production time. Nothing else for us to take in terms of our segments. We apologize for this, but thank you for being with us. The program returns same time tomorrow, 7 o'clock in the morning. My name is Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Claire Delabo Abdul Razak. Do have a pleasant day.